All right, today we are reviewing the Manta foil by F4. Right here I have the 850 Manta. I've had this foil for several months now. Really have ridden it in a variety of conditions, both ocean conditions, on some of our bay runs here in Virginia Beach. Also just got back from the gorge and had about 5 days to try this foil out in a variety of conditions there. But yeah, I've been waiting to do this review. One thing that we're not going to do on this channel is review any sort of foil, having only ridden it, 1 or 2 sessions. That's kind of probably one of my biggest pet peeves in foiling is when people ride something for 30 minutes or, one session and then they give a review. Because we know that, you can't really get a feel for something off of just 1 or 2 sessions. I've had many a times where I've had first impressions about something, and then, after a month, my opinion is completely changed, having ridden something in different conditions or whatever. So like I said, really wanted to wait to do this review, to have ridden this foil in a bunch of different conditions and really got a good feel for it. Also had the opportunity to ride the 750 as well. And like I said, it's just the same exact foil, but a smaller version. I don't really know if F4 markets this foil as their surf foil. Maybe they do, but it's, I think in their line, it's at least in the downwind surf line, I think it's the lowest AR of any of their foils. I think it's like around 8.5 or 9. Certainly doesn't necessarily feel that way because it's still got a ton of glide. And if you've ridden the Orcas, it's very similar to the Orca. I just think it turns a lot better. And for conditions like more stack bumps, bay runs, most of the conditions in the gorge, this is the foil I want to be on. And I've also ridden it. It's, one of the things that really makes this foil great is how, specifically the 850, is how versatile it is. I've ridden it in downwind runs, where the bumps were like knee to thigh high on kind of a weekday at the hatch, and then I've ridden it in bigger ocean conditions, bigger bay conditions, and it really was kind of able to handle all of that. And it's just kind of the versatility in terms of the low end of the wind range and the high end of the wind range really impressed me. If I had to pick one foil right now out of the F4 lineup that I could only live with, and that I would take on most of my trips or use on a daily basis, it'd probably be this foil. The 800 Orca might be a slight second, but the fact that you can pretty much do everything. You can shred on this foil, but you can also chase bumps if you want to. Like I said, it's not as high AR as the Orca, so it's not going to have the glide that the Orca is going to have. It's not going to be able to chase bumps down like the Orca has. It probably doesn't even have as much range as the Orca has. But if you're in those steep bay conditions and you just want to really sit on the bump and just go back and forth and shred and stay high on the bump and go rail to rail, this is the foil you want to be on, in my opinion. What else? Yeah, and a couple things about it. Like the first thing you kind of notice about it is obviously got a lot of dihedral, but it's also really thick, the cord in the front, and then it kind of tapers off and gets really thin. And the wingtips, I don't think the wingtips are as thin as the Orca, but they're still very thin. And then on the other side, you can see it gets very thin. But I think having that thick cord in the front really gives it extremely good low end for its size. I've ridden some other foils similar size, and a lot of times, you get into the smaller 850 or lower, area, they kind of just want to drop out on you. But these foils just don't really do that. I would say it's similar with the Orca too. It's almost like they will fizzle out before it just drops out on you. So, I really appreciate that attribute of the foil. But like I said, it turns insane. It's just crazy how good it turns. I got on the 750. That thing turns even better. Was pretty amazed how flawless the transition was going from the 850 to the 750, but I think you'd probably want better conditions for the 750, but still same feeling. It doesn't really drop out on you. 750 can chase bumps even better. You can put that thing rail to rail, you know, about as easy as any foil I've ever tried. And I think part of that too, you know, the ease of use with these foils is also the Mast. I've been using the skinny AX, both the 85 and the 75 centimeter. And I would say that the skinny Mast, you know, it just gives you so much speed. So like I said, you can chase bumps. Sometimes I think that the skinniness of the Mast and the fact that these foils are so fast can actually be a little bit hard, can be somewhat of a disadvantage, because it's rather than, you know, if your goal is to like stay on the top of the bump and not chase bumps and just cruise back and forth, then it's almost like the speed of these foils is projecting you forward. And a lot of times it's kind of like make it easy to chase bumps, but that's, you know, typically not what you want to do if you're on a surf foil. So it'd be interesting to maybe try it with a thicker mask. That might kind of help slow things down a little bit. I haven't done that, but I would, you know, be interested in maybe trying to do that. I forgot what the thicker mask that F4 makes is called, but it would be cool to try those foils out with this mast, or excuse me, with this wing. But yeah, so this is just an amazingly great foil. The only thing I would say bad about it is I would like to see maybe some bigger sizes. The 850 is something that generally I'm going to ride when the conditions are decent to good. And then if their conditions are really good, maybe drop down to the 750. You know, I'm 160 pounds for reference, but it would be really great if, you know, that they made like a 950 Manta or maybe even a 1050 for those, you know, smaller days. One foil I've been riding a lot is the Code 985X. And I really like that for like when the bumps are just really weak. But you know, F4 doesn't have any Manta that size. So it would be cool to see them, maybe them make some of the bigger Mantas for those just weaker conditions, something bigger than the 850. But overall, been pretty happy with the 850. Like I said, it's a super versatile wing. Also had the chance to ride it the other day, actually during a no-winder almost. I was going to grab the 985X, but I couldn't find a tail for it on the Code setup, so I ended up grabbing this. And it was actually a sub session. And I was on a small board, less than 7 feet, and I couldn't believe in how such gutless conditions I was able to really paddle this foil up as easily as I did. And then the other thing was, you know, there was like basically no wind bumps during that run, and it was just all groundswell. I think it was like 4 feet at like 7 seconds. So that in those types of conditions, it's tricky because, you know, you want a big foil to make the paddle up easy and to keep you on the gutless wind bumps. But then when you're on the bigger groundswell, you need something to keep up. And during that run, that was basically all there was just groundswell. But I was really impressed because the 850 was able to keep up with some of that bigger, faster moving groundswell. So yeah, so once again, that just basically goes into the versatility of this wing. Very stoked on it. It's basically been my you know, go-to in terms of bay runs or just surfier conditions. I have not tried the Piranha yet. I know that's a little bit higher AR and it kind of sits between the Orca and the Manta, but so far been really stoked on this wing. When I was out of the gorge, it was actually interesting. I saw so many people riding F4, but I really didn't see anyone riding the Manta, which kind of blew my mind because, you know, out in the gorge and Hood River and, you know, the hatch run or the tunnel run, whatever you want to call it, the bumps are really very stacked and close together, and you really don't need you know, a high aspect wing. You just really don't. And in fact, sometimes if you do have one, you're going to end up outrunning the bumps, or it's just going to be hard to stay in the pocket. So I was really surprised that although I saw a lot of people riding F4, I didn't see as many people on the Manta. So yeah, so once again, just highly recommend the Manta. Can't say enough good things about this wing. If you haven't tried it, definitely get a hold of one. It's a great wing. F4 makes amazing foils. And yeah, that's that. Thanks so much for watching this review. Appreciate it.